The last two teardowns weren't that catastrophic. Sure, yes, those are bad engines. The big block Chevrolet, bad main bearings, and last week's Dodge Ram Hemi. We all know what happened there, but no damaged rods, no holes in blocks, no bent valves, none of those things. No smashed plugs, no malice in the combustion palace, and, well, it's time. It's time for some carnage. This week we're going to tear down this 1.7 liter Honda D17A2. It's a single overhead cam Vtec engine that came in the 2001 to 2005 Honda Civic EX here in the US. It was called the SI in Canada, which is weird, and then it was in several other vehicles with different trim levels in the rest of the world. It's 127 horsepower, 114 foot-pounds of torque, and I don't like these engines at all. Well, it's a Honda. How could you even say those things? Well, first off, I'm not telling you that you can't get 250, 300,000 miles out of these engines. I've seen that a lot. These engines can go the distance. I am merely stating the fact that the previous 3 generations of D-Series engines in the Civics were better than this. In every way, every single way, with maybe the only exception being the fact that this has coil on plug and the previous generations are distributors, which do have some issues. But the engine itself is just not as good. The D16Y8, which is the engine that this replaced that came in the 96 to 2000 Honda Civics, those have their issues. They burn oil, people starve them, they overheat, they blow head gaskets, but they're great engines. They'll go 400, 500,000 miles as long as you keep fluids in them. These engines don't do that. They do not. You have to put a head gasket on them, 150, 200, 250,000 miles. They develop a slight coolant leak, and that's all it takes. Now, I've seen these engines with blown head gaskets run for another 20,000 miles with just mild symptoms. So I'm not here telling you that these engines all blow up and they're all trash. This is not a rotary. It's not a Subaru. These engines can go the distance. It's just that the engines that this replaced aren't as good. Plus, this doesn't make any more power. The Y8 makes the same horsepower as this. The extra tenth of displacement made 7 foot-pounds of torque in a much heavier car. Sorry, I don't like them. Well, I'd like to show you how the crankcase ventilation system works. You've got your hose here that goes to the breather, and then you've got your giant gaping hole in the front of the block. That way you never have too much crankcase pressure, and coincidentally, you can use this as an inspection port, which we can take a look at the crankshaft, and it appears it is in needs to be machined condition. This one's going to be fun. Since we know there's a hole in the block, the next logical step is to see if this engine turns over. I gotta know. I even feel compression. I can tell you there's still a belt on it. Yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine. The very first thing I'd like to do is start taking all this clutter off. I want a clean workspace, no cut harness, none of this stuff. That's good. Apparently not. Still no. Trapped by hoses. Oh no, I tore the hose. Oh, now I can't sell that. All right, well, what's left of the harness is off. Now we can pull the coils and the plugs. Well, those are a little wet, looks like water. Well, they look ugly, but nothing is destroyed. Rather large gap. I'd say that it's definitely done some miles on these plugs, but they all look about the same, and I don't see anything damaged yet. While we're here, I'm going to get this exhaust manifold off. It looks like somebody already tried. They left this rounded off bolt. We're going to see if we can get that out. We're going to hammer the incorrect size onto it. Nope, we're just going to do this. That also works. It's a little bit easier. Doesn't always have the same outcome. See, it came right off. Just needs a little bit of persuasion. Let's go ahead. Kind of hard to see in there. I don't see anything too terrible. Not like hunks of metal or anything. But oh boy, look at that inspection port. That's a good one.
Well, that's one of the best inspection ports we've ever had. I can see inside the engine all the way from here.
Next thing I'd like to do is remove the intake manifold. Let's go ahead and get this fuel rail out of the way here. Looks like I need blue for this one. All right, injectors and rail are off. And now I need to remove this bracket, which blocks access to one of the intake manifold bolts. Now there are 3 intake manifold bolts that you pretty much need to use a wrench on. Actually, there's 4. These come out pretty easy. Before I fight those, let's get some of these hoses out of the way. I just don't want to damage them at all. Okay, I give up. Sorry, I don't sell rubber hoses here. That one played nice. So the 3 bolts that are less than ideal, well, bolts and nuts, that one, and that one. I need these tiny holes to go through. We'll get them out. Nope, let's get another wrench. Do I not need to take those out? Oh yeah, that's right. I don't think I need to take those out. Yeah, it was just that center one. So it doesn't look like I actually had to take that one or that one off. It is loose after getting that center one out. Oh wait, I gotta take the brackets off the bottom of the block. And it's off. Look at all that. Look at all that carbon in there from the EGR valve. Yuck. So I'll look at the intake ports. There might be some damage in that one, but there's no chunks of metal anywhere. That one looks good. Everything looks pretty good. But that doesn't look pretty good. And even the gasket itself has built up chunks of carbon from the EGR system. That's totally plugged there. Next stop, valve cover. Actually, we'll go ahead and pull the dipstick. This doesn't have a dipstick tube, so there's no fight. I can relax. Smidge of oil on the stick. Let's see. Ah, Velcro valve cover gasket. Those never leak. Well, it actually looks pretty clean in here. So looking around in here, it looks pretty good. That's a little much there. It's the only one that's like that. The rest of these are pretty tight. These are very easy to do a valve adjustment on. It's really nice. But I don't see any sparkles, metal deposits, nothing alarming. Next, we're going to remove the Vtec solenoid. The reason I do this, I've brought this up in the past, the gasket between the Vtec solenoid and the cylinder head has a little screen in it. And if there was lots of metal in the oil, that screen usually catches the larger chunks. So it's a good indicator if you're looking at an engine to buy to pull this off and take a look at the screen. If it's clean, you're generally good as far as bearing wear. Probably going to leak some oil. Yeah, just a little. So this one is pretty clean. There's virtually nothing alarming, nothing from the inside of the engine that's not supposed to be there. It looks good. Now this 230 number is not the miles, that's the stock number from the vehicle this came from. I do not know the miles other than I think it was over 200,000, which is no surprise for one of these cars. Let me get this timing cover out of the way, at least the upper. Look at that, belt still intact. It is wet. Next, we're going to remove the crank pulley bolt. Sometimes these are pretty tight, but some of you have noticed the socket I use. This is a weighted Ingersoll Rand socket. These work really well for those tight Honda bolts. Every time. Next, we're going to get the power steering pump bracket and the motor mount bracket out of the way. It'll just make it easier to work on. And now we can pull the rest of the lower timing cover. Oh, okay. Well, that's just kind of melted, worn, deformed, or is that glue? Nope. Axle grease. So the timing system looks like it's definitely been done. It's got a Dayco water pump on it. It's a little wet in here. It's hard to say where that came from. Could be a crank seal. Belt will sling everything everywhere. So we'll go ahead and peel this belt off and then take the water pump off. This isn't dangerous. It's fine. Yeah, that looks good. I missed the bin completely. There's a reason I didn't play basketball. It all looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and remove this. Got my pan ready. Ah, nice clean Honda blue. This pump is pretty much perfect. It doesn't look that old. There's no play in it. Everything looks clean. It's a nice, solid water pump. Now, I know I could remove the cylinder head with this, but I'm going to remove this water manifold and the EGR valve. We'll just get this whole unit off the side of the engine. All right, that's loose. I just have this rubber hose, which I think we're just going to take coolant pipe off the back here. I think blue can help us out here. Ah, yes. All off at once. Next, we'll get the cam gear off. All right, now we're going to crack these loose. Now, I could take the cylinder head off complete, but if I intend on selling this head, I need to know what the journals and the cam look like. I can't just assume it's good without checking it. So we're going to take it apart on camera. End caps loose. It looks like we need to give it a little tap-a-roo. Just give it a tap. Yeah. All right, now the cam should just come right out. Well, outside of that, here's our first signs of trouble. A little bit of damage there to that journal. They're not all that bad. Primarily just the front one. There's a little bit of damage to some of these, but it's really not as bad as that first one. And the same is evident on the camshaft. The rest of the cam looks pretty good. Not really much damage, just that front part right here. The journals in the caps, still a little bit of damage there. But the rest of these look nice, as does the rest of the valve train. And now the head bolts. Oh, let's put the brakes on first. I don't know how tight these are going to be, probably not very. Okay, time to lift the head. I see. Well, you know what's next, guys. The test. The test is next. Cylinder 1. That was a miss. Cylinder 1. Cylinder 2. There's some problems there. Cylinder 3. Cylinder 4. So, 75%. It's not terrible. Could be better. Really like to see closer to 80 or 90, but that works. So cylinder 1, not so bad. That's just a piece of debris. And those 2 little dings, those are the way the pistons are cast. That didn't happen from whatever happened here. Now cylinder 2, well, that's weird. It says PLR A0 on that side, and it's upside down on that one. So this piston has somehow spun 180 degrees in the bore, which is really impressive. You can see that arrow is pointed the other way. That's supposed to point towards the front of the engine. That one's pointed towards the back. Cylinder 3 looks okay, and 4 looks pretty good as well. So the head gasket is still on here. Let's see if we can get this off without slicing myself. Why won't you come off? All right. It doesn't look too bad, but you can definitely tell that valve is bent right there. Combustion chamber's been hit with the piston. Crown of the piston hit that. That one looks okay and that one looks okay, but I wonder why that one is wet. Next, I'm going to remove this crankcase vent plate because I'd like to see if there's any more damage to the block behind this. No, it looks pretty good. I don't see any damage in there. It's surprising. Let's see if we can get this filter off. We'll cut it open later. Oh, come on. Who put this on here? Yeah, we'll get her. That was on there pretty tight, so I don't think it had a leak. No, I'm getting this off. I guess I'm just tired tonight. A Pennzoil filter. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's probably rebranded. Now it's time to pull the oil pan. I've decided I'm going to pull it in this position since I know there's probably chunks of engine in it. All right, I think I got them all. I might have one more here in this area. Nope, we're good. Blue, will you give us a hand? Okay. Ooh, there's some loose stuff in there. Oh. Oh. I'm just going to rotate this all the way over, and then I'll show you what's inside the pan. So I haven't disturbed anything in here. It looks like this was a rod cap, and it still has part of the rod on it. That's some contemporary art. That is part of the main cap girdle. Oh, no. I was hoping to sell this oil pan, but nope, that's not probably going to happen. Is there anything in here besides oil? Yeah, we're going to have to, let me drain this, and then we'll pour out its contents. So now that there's less fluid in here, we have a whole bunch of stuff. That looks like part of a rod. There's a very broken rod bolt. We've got some bearing foil. And now we're going to remove this baffle. Well, there's a couple small slivers. And lots of ick. Yeah, there's a lot of paste in here. So there's the impact mark on the pan. I'm not sure that this pan would be worth selling. They're worth about $100 when they're good. And having damage like that may not make this worth selling. But look at what this looks like. This is a work of art. There's some chunks of metal still in here. I see rod, maybe some aluminum. There's definitely some bearing foil, lots of it. Lots of sparkly matter and some water, but this engine did sit outside. Not a lot of wreckage. This is what came out. Small engine, small wreckage. This was definitely a casualty of post-destruction or during the destruction. That's not what caused it. But I can look in the pickup and I don't see any debris. It looks pretty clean and clear. I don't see anything poking out. So I think the next thing we're going to do is remove the pickup, pull the oil pump off, we'll get this girdle off, and get this thing torn down. And now the oil pump. Couple taps on to do it. Perfect. Now it's time to take the oil pump apart. Oh, get out of there. Ooh, it's kind of gritty. Well, there's definitely some damage to the housing. And even in here, there's definitely been some fine metal run through here. Something caused that damage. Maybe it was lack of lubrication. The gears don't look too bad. I don't see hardly any wear on them, but they are a lot harder metal than this soft aluminum. Next, we'll get this brace removed, which is also the main cap plate. Oh, need some taps here. I don't know if this will do it. No, that's just turning this over. Let's pull these bolts out first. Very
Oh no!
That's not what I wanted to happen. I should have seen that one coming. Let's go ahead and pull these shells off. I put them back in the order they came from, backwards apparently, because the oiling hole is on the wrong side. It's fine. While we're here, I'm going to unbolt all of the rods and pistons. Well, that one doesn't want to come off. We'll just get the last one out. I'm going to knock this rear plate off real quick. All right, I think at this point I'm just going to pull on the crank and see what happens. I got this one cap that doesn't want to come off. I think the crank will... I have put myself in a situation now. Boy, this was ill thought out. Okay. All right, now, right out. Well, got 3.5 rods and pistons. Well, that one doesn't really want to... Oh, yes, it turns. It moves. All I've got to do is knock these right out. Let's see, will this one come out? No, that's going to take some force. Let's go to number 3. And number 4. right, now for number 2. It's pretty appropriate. The number 2 is the one. Oh, that didn't take too much force. Oh. Neat. Whoa. So this is pretty impressive. I am impressed because the disparity between a couple of cylinders is crazy. So this is obviously the one that let go. And these are the bearings out of the good cylinders. And they are clearly worn pretty heavily, but they're not damaged. They're just worn, which tells me this might be a higher mileage engine. Although the inside castings were really clean. Most of these look pretty good. A little bit of skirt wear. Rings are all relatively free on these. But cylinder 2 did some things I've never seen before. For starters, it did a pirouette and spun 180 degrees. You can see it's broken the piston, smashed the ring, it's cracked right there. But what's really interesting is that it made its own keyway for what's left of this. Let's see if I can even move this. I don't think I can move this. Can I move this? No, I'm going to hurt myself. So that's really stuck. There's lots of bruises and damages everywhere. Look at that rod. I still think we're missing a piece. I think there's a missing link here. I think it was launched into outer space. It looks like the bearing came apart, and then this beat itself apart on the crankshaft, and it turned this into what looks like a bullet. It isn't. It's a stretched rod bolt. It's really impressive. I don't know what's more impressive, that or the crankshaft, because this all looks really good. If you just ignore this journal, the rest of these look really good, but this one, look at the damage. You know how hard this metal is? And that is deep. This is one of the most beat up journals I think I've ever seen. Clearly had a lot of heat, a lot of friction. You can tell by the way it's colored. It's totally discolored, like your cast iron skillets. When they get cooked so many times, they turn colors. Same thing is happening here on the cast iron crankshaft. And the main cap girdle, you can definitely tell what cylinder let go. The main bearings do have some wear, but it's much like the worn rod bearings, except right here. That's a scorch mark right there on that bearing. Outside of that, it doesn't look like they're that bad. I mean, like I said, the disparity between what is good and bad here, it's a little bit of damage there too. You can see how shiny that is. It's not supposed to be quite that shiny. What happened here? How did one cylinder starve itself and the rest of them relatively no damage? These blocks are not terribly strong. So when Uncle Rodney comes knocking, he'll usually make an exit, and that's what happened here. That is a gigantic hole. You almost couldn't knock any more material out between those two journals. That's wild. Now, the boards do have some damage, some pitting there. That one is the one that let go. It's got some sort of sauce in it. I don't know what that is. It's a mixture of oil and coolant. But they're not that bad. They're really not. All right, we've got this filter cut open, and you can already tell there's a bunch of debris in there. Some clean oil. Oh, yeah. There's not a lot of surface area of this filter, but every single pleat has sharp shards of metal, not fine stuff. So I don't know if you can see that. There's not a lot in here, but each one of these has 1 or 2, maybe 3 slivers of metal in it. Filter did a good job. Kept it out of the rest of the system. I think this engine suffered a pretty quick death. It does look like it was maintained. Not a lot of varnish in the top of that engine or anywhere in the crankcase. Looks like it had oil changes on time, which I love to see that. This engine saw a timing belt and water pump replacement at least once, valve cover gasket, and who knows what other kind of maintenance along the 200,000+ miles this engine lived. However, maintaining your engine and maintaining oil level should be the same thing. It should be the exact same thing, but they're not always the same for some people. And I think what happened here is this engine was probably a quart or two low on oil, and it would have been fine at low RPM, but if someone put their foot in it, it sucks whatever oil the sump can reach into the top of the engine, and as soon as air touches that pickup, it aerates. It loses oil pressure, and I think these engines are not very tolerant of that. I don't think this was a sustained, long situation where this engine constantly was run low on oil, because we would have seen more damage to the cam and the cam journals. There would have been more bearing damage, but for whatever reason, that one cylinder, it just couldn't stand it. There's clearly a lot of friction, a lot of heat, tore up that bearing, beat the rod apart, and chucked parts of it. They're gone. I didn't get the entire rod. It's gone. It's somewhere on the street, somewhere, hopefully not in somebody's tire. And I don't know how a piston turns 180 degrees in the bore. I just don't. If you guys have any theories on that, I'm all ears. I really hope you enjoyed this teardown. There's a few parts to sell from this engine. I didn't pay much for it, so I'm not really that concerned about it. So if you'd like stuff for your desk, or you need a few parts off of it for your own Civic, or anything else I've torn down, you can go to Importapart.com, or I'm going to leave our email in the video description. I've been adding our parts cars or new inventory in just about every single week. Really hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.